not even thinking about, I'm naive about anything about that.
Molly Shannon revealed an incredibly shocking story about Gary Coleman in her memoir, Hello, Molly. What started out as an innocent meeting with the TV star turned into something much more sinister.
I mean,
He
that's
was
crazy.
relentless.
This story shows a whole other side to Gary that no one really knew about. Trust me, this insane encounter between them is unlike anything you've ever heard before. It feels like it's almost every year now that we hear about how a popular male celebrity has actually done some shady things in their past. Woody Allen, Kevin Spacey, Armie Hammer, Johnny Depp, James Franco. The list just keeps growing. And now, Molly has just added another name to that list. And you're not going to believe what she had to say about the traumatic experience she allegedly had with Gary. She just never saw it coming. Molly got very candid about the incident in her book, and also when she talked to Howard Stern about it on his show.
Gary Coleman was one of the biggest stars in the world,
Oh,
you know.
yes.
Molly met Gary in 1987. She was hoping to sign with his agent, Mark Randall. So of course, when Mark asked her if she'd like to meet Gary, she was so over the moon about the prospect. She was just 18 years old and couldn't believe that she'd gotten the same agent as someone so famous. Gary was a huge star at that point. He was 19 and had just left his widely successful TV show, Diff'rent Strokes. Mark suggested they all meet up together for tea at the Plaza Hotel where Gary was staying. Molly emphasized just how naive and innocent she was at the time. She had never even been intimate with anyone before, and she never in a million years thought that Gary could be attracted to her physically. Apparently, Gary began hitting on her big time though. He held her hand and told her that she looked just like his co-star Dana Plato, which she took as a gigantic compliment because she totally loved her. In general, she said that they were having a great time laughing and joking. Then Gary suggested the three of them go upstairs and check out his residential suite, and that's when things took a dark turn. Once they got up there, Mark made an excuse to leave, and suddenly it was just Gary and Molly on their own.
Mark
Right.
disappeared.
Oh, they had a whole move. Mark disappears from the room, leaves
yeah.
you alone with Gary
Yeah.
Coleman.
He reportedly sat down on the bed and patted the spot next to him to encourage the young Molly to go sit there. In her book, Molly wrote that the possibility of something of an adult nature occurring hadn't even crossed her mind. Gary was so small because he suffered from a kidney disease. He used a dialysis machine on a daily basis, and Molly could see it in the corner of the room. Nothing about the situation was remotely arousing. With Gary's size, his family-friendly reputation, and Molly's overall naivety, Molly never could have imagined what happened next.
He's like, could you like tickling me?
Then it went from tickling to inappropriate touching. He allegedly tried grabbing her ankles, and from there he kept making attempts to lie on top of her and kiss her. Obviously, Molly was in shock and she just couldn't process what was going on. She described Gary as being relentless. She pushed him away and stood up, but Gary climbed up on the bed and jumped off, using it as a springboard to launch himself at her, kissing her wildly. And this went on and on. He'd wrap himself around her and she'd have to fling him off over and over again.
And then he got on top of me.
In her memoir, Molly wrote that Gary would stick his quote-unquote baby hands under her shirt. She confessed to Howard that because of Gary's size, she didn't feel physically threatened by him, but she was obviously still very uncomfortable. After all their back and forth, she was feeling exhausted because she was literally flinging him off of her repeatedly, so often that she got out of breath and was sweating. Eventually, she got off the bed and headed toward the bathroom, but Gary reportedly grabbed hold of her entire leg and clung onto it as she tried to walk across the room. Finally, she managed to shake him off, and she locked herself in the bathroom and tried to calm herself down and understand what just happened. It didn't end there though. In fact, it only got even creepier. Just when she thought she'd found some kind of haven from the madness, she noticed something strange at the bathroom door. She claimed that she saw Gary's wiggling fingers come underneath it, and from outside the bathroom door, he said the last thing that you would want to hear in that situation. situation.
And he's like, I can see you. Like,
No,
The whole thing sounds kind of like a nightmare. Molly didn't come out of that bathroom until Gary stopped trying to get in. She just had to wait until he gave up. Once she felt confident that had happened, she quickly and politely said goodbye and dashed out of the hotel room. When she bumped into Mark, the agent, she told him that he better watch out for his client because he was wild. And that was the last time they spoke to each other, and she never heard from him again. It really was just one of the craziest encounters. When Molly was recounting it to Howard, they were both laughing at the incident, but that changed toward the end of the interview.
but really, it's not funny. I mean, the agent leaving the room and leaving you alone.
I mean, Howard was right. It wasn't funny. Sure, the bizarreness and the ridiculousness of the situation might be amusing now that a lot of time has passed, but at the end of the day, it was probably a traumatic experience for Molly. If you imagine an ordinary sized person doing those things to her, then there'd be no doubt in your mind that she'd experienced something that was beyond inappropriate. And we can once again see how much the culture has changed since then. Molly didn't say anything to the agent or to anyone back then, but hopefully nowadays, since the hashtag #MeToo movement, women can feel more confident to not stay silent about these types of terrible experiences. The story is eerily similar to what a lot of Harvey Weinstein's victims went through. They'd be invited up to his hotel room under the premise that they'd be talking about their careers and then would be left alone with him. Sadly, Molly wasn't the only woman who Gary harmed, and the other incidents were much more controversial and dangerous. In 1998, Gary was shopping for a bulletproof vest when he was approached by a fan named Tracy Fields. She wanted his autograph, and after he refused, the pair got into a heated argument. Things escalated when Tracy repeatedly began making fun of Gary and his dwindling career. He later claimed that she wouldn't leave him alone, that he was getting scared, and that she was getting ugly, which apparently was why he then ended up punching Tracy in the face over and over again. He received a suspended jail sentence, he had to pay for her medical bills, and take anger management classes. Just over a decade later, he was reportedly arrested for DV, so it looks like he had some serious anger issues he needed to work through. But he tragically didn't have long to work through those issues because he passed away in 2010 at the age of 42. According to a report by the New York Post, he suffered from an epidural hematoma after he fell down the stairs at his home in Utah. His life honestly sounds really tragic actually, but of course that doesn't excuse his behavior in the hotel room that day with Molly. However, now the climate is changing and more dangerous men are being arrested for their crimes, there will be less incidents like this in the future. But what do you guys think? Did you have any idea that Gary was supposedly capable of being so inappropriate? Let me know in the comments below.